They can't talk, but we can. You've probably heard their stories, seen their faces on the news, but what you don't know is that all of these kids had special needs. They were disabled and they all died from abuse or neglect, sometimes years on end.
A daycare worker repeatedly beat a baby boy, and then another daycare worker hit a baby girl.
They can't talk, but we can. The birth of a child and the process of becoming parents is a major turning point for most people. Each person's experience of becoming a parent is different. While for some, it will be an easy transition. For others, it may create some unexpectancy. For many couples, sharing the experience of their child's birth can be very special. Parenting is both a wonderful and a challenging experience that can add a great deal of pressure. It is the single most important responsibility people will perpetually undertake. But parents of a child with special needs undoubtedly have bigger challenges to overcome than you ever thought possible. When parents learn that their child has a disability or a chronic illness, they begin a journey that takes them into a life that is often filled with strong emotion, difficult choices, interactions with many different professionals and specialists, and an ongoing need for information and services. You'll meet the Hatchers, who gave birth to 2 special needs children, both Elijah and Aaron, and Lisa Williams, much like the Hatchers, gave birth to a special needs son, Alex Williams. Like any other parent, they educated themselves, raised their children, and sent them to public school, only to discover the concealment of abuse in the public school system. So the question of how many children are abused and neglected each year in the United States is seemingly simple, but it does not have an easy answer. Several agencies collect and analyze different data using different methods. In addition, not every suspicion or situation of abuse or neglect is reported to Child Protection Services agencies. As a result, the number of reports likely underrepresent the number of children who actually suffer from abuse or neglect. The Hatchers tell their story.
My name is Ronald Hatcher. I'm 47 years old, and I grew up in Jupiter, Florida.
My name is Denise Hatcher. I'm 46 years old, and I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida.
I grew up with my mom, single parent, and my brother, Albert Hatcher, and Chanel Carter. And we all had a great little family. My mom, she did everything on her own, and she taught us everything about life.
I met Ronald when I went to Bethune-Cookman College during my sophomore or junior year. We got married. He proposed and we got married in Roswell, Georgia, not too far from my home where I live.
I went to Palm Beach Gardens High School, and I was a singer. And so my cousin, she introduced us. And from that point on, we got to know each other. We had a great time with her family.
So when me and Ronald got together, I was pregnant and I didn't know it until a few months later. And he was okay with it. First he wasn't, but he was okay with it. And we ended up staying together even though I was pregnant with someone else's child. And we just took off from there with the family.
From a previous relationship, I had my son, Ronald Hatcher Jr. He was born March 24th, 1986. Aaron, he was born with muscular dystrophy and cerebral palsy. And also we had Elijah, and Elijah was special needs as well. He was born with muscular dystrophy. And Ayana, she was our child that was just, we were going through so much with the 2 of the kids with the special needs, and we were just hoping and praying that we didn't have another child with special needs, and we had Ayana. With Ayana, she did not have any disabilities, and we were grateful of that. Now, having Aaron and Elijah, it was hard.
Aaron, when he was born, about 4 months old, is when we noticed that Aaron wasn't doing everything that a normal child should do.
And I had issues pretty much dealing with the disability, and my wife, she was just like the person that would just take control and make sure everything was going right. And I felt like I didn't really understand it, and by her teaching me how to understand, it made me feel better as a father.
Like Ron said, when he first started dealing with them, it was a little bit hard, and he was afraid to take them out in public because he pretty much didn't know how to handle them.
My name is Ronald Anthony Hatcher Jr. I am 29 years old. Being the oldest brother, I feel that, I watch, everything. I'm very observant about everything. I am a support system for my mom and dad, and whenever that they need me, I'll be there.
Well, for the two special needs kids, I had to make a routine for both of them to help with them and to help with myself. And it was a lot of hard work, but I did it because they're my kids and they had to be taken care of.
I watched Aaron and Elijah grow up, and now it was time for them to go to school.
When sending my kids off to school, it was a little more difficult with the special needs kids because they were more babied when they were growing up, because they wore Pampers and they were in bottles and they were fed baby foods the whole time they were growing up. But I cried when I sent each one of my kids off to school on the bus. All of them went to school on the bus and came home on the bus. Just like any other mother, it's difficult to send your kids out, to see them go out into the world alone without your protection.
We didn't come to the full knowledge until 2010. My son, Aaron Hatcher, allegedly being abused by school officials.
He would wake up in the middle of the night and he would start screaming. He would be screaming and hyperventilating, and I didn't know what was going on. And I would just sit there and comfort him and talk to him and try to calm him down. For no reason, almost for a year in the middle of the night.
Now, in Aaron's case, this was, I just remember going to the school, and at this particular time, 2006, we knew nothing about abuse. All we knew is that we were dropping him off, and Aaron was just going to school to surprise him. So we went up to the school, and we were surprised. I heard Aaron's voice. We were walking through the hallway, and he was kind of like, And so I'm like, that sounds like Aaron. But Aaron wasn't in the classroom. He was kind of across the hall with the door kind of, if I can remember, it was kind of closed like a little, about like this, and the light was off. And so as I walked in, I heard him like murmuring and kind of getting cranked up to start a cry. So I followed it. And when I followed it, Aaron was in a room. He was by himself. And so immediately I was so upset that I went looking for whoever it was that put him in the room by himself. I wanted to know why he was in the room, what was going on, what could he have done to be in a room by himself, because he couldn't talk, he couldn't do any of that. So at that time, me and one of the teachers, we kind of got into it. And so at that time, I just was so upset. I was like, why is he in here? What's going on? So it kind of got a little elevated. And so I demanded that we get him out of this particular teacher's class, because I don't know what was going on at that time. And so they assured me, oh, Mr. Hatcher, everything is fine. Oh, he's just in there. And at that time, I was cool for a minute, but in my mind, I had to get him out of that class because I didn't know what was going on. I was shocked because Aaron had this something made out of a back brace, and it was placed on his neck because, see, Aaron was growing this way. And when he was growing this way, it was because he, with cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy, you grow this way because they have to breathe. They can't do like us, and sit this way. So this particular teacher, according to the nurse, had placed a back brace. She ripped it up, put a belt around his neck, and forced him to look this way. And what this did, this cut his airwaves. It damaged his airwaves. Now, when I was informed to come up to the school, I went up to the school and I saw this myself. I saw this, and I took pictures because I wanted to, I wanted to let you all know I witnessed this. This is nothing made up. This was for real. And this teacher, it was like she had done nothing wrong. And so I didn't say anything. I didn't get upset. I was just taking pictures. And Aaron, he could kind of communicate with me a little bit with his eyes, or just like, or something like that. So when I got in there, I asked him, I was like, Aaron, is this the teacher that did this to you? And he was like, And so I knew right then, because I believed in our relationship. And so I left the school. And when I left the school, I emailed everybody I could think of. The janitor, I emailed anybody that would get this message out. As I went to my next step, I went to the doctor, and I was trying, I went and got the doctor to write a letter. And this was on, I know this date was March 17th is when I got the letter. March 19th is when Aaron died. And so I was doing so much to try to get this letter to the teachers and to all the school officials, and it was too late. And so now we are left here with all this going on. And so after Aaron's funeral, we thought everything was fine. And so I got a call from this parent, and she was like, Mr. Hatcher, I have to meet with you. I have to meet with you. You got to meet me at this location. And so I went to the location, and I met with her, and she gave me this stack of papers. And she said, I was wondering, why would they take Aaron out of this class at the end of the year? And so I was looking through these papers that I got that state that he was in a cover-up. And I was like, a cover-up from what? From what? And so she told me that he was in a cover-up because he was being allegedly abused in school around 2006, 2007, around that time. So when I got to that point, I read some of the pages. It was saying that he was thrown out of a wheelchair, said that he was locked into a room, and it was kind of like prison. And so when she said that, I just closed the book, I got everything, and I went home and I said, okay, I'm gonna try to read this. And so when I was trying to read it, my body just went into, I had a heart attack. And so I closed the book, and that night it was, I didn't know what was going on with my body, but my arm was hurting. So I would hold my arm up, and so I went to the hospital, and they said, you're giving yourself a heart attack.
When I found out that my brother was being abused at school, it made me very upset, so, and I couldn't believe it at first, until especially when they were saying all this stuff in the news and on the papers and, all this madness that they was talking about, it really did something to me, because it felt like my whole soul just dropped. At that time, I just had to stay calm. I had to stay humble, because, how would anybody feel if something happened to their loved ones? When you are a teacher, I feel that it's your job to teach to the students, to protect them, not to inflict any type of harm.
I got a phone call that Aaron, I guess, he stopped breathing. He started violently shaking, and he stopped breathing. and they called the ambulance. My oldest son was home when it happened, so I told him to follow the ambulance, get in his car and follow them and let me know everything that was happening, just so I know where they were taking him and how he was doing and if he was still living or not. I immediately left the event as fast as I could. I had to catch the train and everything. And halfway there, I was praying that he would be okay. Then all of a sudden, I got a peace that came over me that said, everything is okay. Even though when I got to the hospital, a few minutes after that, they had pronounced him dead. So I grabbed my family that was there, and we just all went in the room, and we just prayed over him. We just prayed, and we prayed for a long time. And we were trying to basically bring him back, but it didn't happen, and that was it.
When a child dies before their parents do, it feels so wrong. That great shock is added to the enormous grief and sadness you're already feeling. In March of 2011, Aaron Hatcher passed away. The abuse and forced neck brace were contributing factors to his death. Lisa and Doug Williams met in Atlanta in the early 80s. Lisa and Doug were married in 1984 in the small town of Dunwoody, Georgia. On November 9th, 1991, their first bundle of joy, Chad Williams, was born. On December 1st, 1992, their earlier arrival was born, Alex Williams. And in March of 1995, their baby daughter was born into the family. Lisa, a homemaker, and Doug, a general pediatrician, began to raise their family. The couple learned that their middle child, Alex, was met with several challenges. Between 2006 and 2007, the couple became aware that Alex was habitually being abused by a teacher in the Fulton County School System. Today, a survivor of intense child abuse, Alex is 23 years old. Lisa Williams shares her story.
My middle son is named Alex, and he's disabled. I have a little bit of a unique situation in the fact that we discovered his difficulty, or that he would be having difficulties, actually before he was born. So we had weeks to prepare prior to his delivery that he was going to potentially have difficulties. And so once he was born, the wheels were in motion for him to, have surgery and be in the NICU, and everything was actually in place when he was born. The biggest question was what his capability would ultimately be. And we did do chromosome studies, so he was chromosomally normal, which made the picture a little unclear because in absence of a chromosomal abnormality, it allowed him the ability to really have the potential to do pretty well. Alex was diagnosed in utero with hydrocephalus, and the compression that the hydrocephalus was creating before we delivered him did cause some damage, as well as his prematurity period, because we delivered him early. So he has cerebral palsy, and he has what would be called developmental delay, meaning he was much slower to acquire skills than other children. But he did eventually start developing language, which was really exciting. As far as dealing with the disabilities, I had 3 children very close in age, and because he was chromosomally normal, the doctors would tell me, nobody knows what Alex knows. Language development would be somewhat of an indicator of his intelligence and what he may acquire, but nobody knew what Alex knew. So basically for me, I just treated him normal. I had a child 1 year older. I ended up having a child 2 years younger, and I treated them I treated him normal. If one went out to swing, we all went out to swing. If one was in the sandbox, we were all in the sandbox. And the difference was I would have to assist him in sitting up. We actually started him in a program. It was really, my other children were doing a kind of a preschool, my oldest one. And we kind of felt like it would be good for Alex to do something. So he actually went to a little private program called the Adaptive Learning Center. And there he got PT and OT and speech, and he socialized. They helped him learn to walk with a walker. And it was just really kind of an early start for him. At that time, my children were growing up. They were becoming more independent. And they, had a lot of friends outside the home. And Alex had some changes, but we weren't completely, devastated or thinking anything dramatic at that time. We didn't completely understand kind of what was going on, but there were just some changes. And I actually got a call from another parent. The day I talked to her, I had no idea what she was talking about. And she was telling me about this investigation and that the names were all redacted for privacy. But she felt like it was more than just her son. And, I feel like at the time she called me, I think she might have thought that we knew. I'm not sure she realized that I had no idea. And finally, I just said to her, I have no idea what you're talking about. And so she encouraged me to meet with her and get a copy of the investigation. And all the names were redacted, so like she said, you'll have to read and just kind of see if, based on some of the descriptions of the children, you may find that your child is in the investigation. And I didn't know what had happened to my son, to be quite honest. I could guess was really what I had to go on. I was of the belief that given the opportunity to be in what I thought was a safe situation for the individuals to be able to tell their story, that the truth would come out freely. Things just started falling apart after that. My son deteriorated to the point that he ended up in the hospital and was diagnosed with PTSD. And I decided I had to know what happened. Looking back even during that time, I've never really been heavily involved in the legal system. So I was kind of being guided through a lot of things that I really didn't at the time completely understand. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot since then. I've learned a lot about rights that parents of disabled children have that are great in and of themselves, but unless there's a mechanism to enforce those rights, they don't exist. I mean, rights are only as good as your ability to exercise them. We know our children like nobody else. Moms of disabled children, they just know. I think they know. I think they know what their children need, and just to try not to give up.
According to National Child Abuse and Neglect Data System, estimated 3.3 million referrals of child abuse or neglect were received by agencies. Of these referrals, 899,000 children were confirmed to be victims of abuse or neglect. That means about 12 out of every 1,000 children up to the age of 18 in the United States were found to be victims of child abuse or neglect. Carol Sadler is a special education consultant and a private advocate. After being a volunteer for CHAD and LDA coordinator for almost 4 years, she decided to go into the field of special education and consulting. She's presently working on cases with primarily ADHD, learning disabilities, dyslexia, speech and language disorders, apraxia, sensory integration disorder, Asperger's, PDD, NOS, autism, nonverbal LD, bipolar, and comorbid mental health, and neurological issues. Carol Sadler, a mother of 2 children with multiple neurological disabilities, has dealt with several school issues, which have afforded her the opportunity to learn and navigate the special education system and disability laws that apply. For her, she says it's certainly been a challenging and frustrating experience, which she hopes to change for others.
I met Ron at Alec Williams' due process hearing against Hopewell Middle School. It was the awful abuse case by teacher Melanie Pickens. We had lunch together at this hearing. His son was also in Melanie Pickens' classroom. Many advocates and attorneys came out to support attorney Chris Vance during this due process hearing because this case was just so egregious and horrific that abuse against a whole classroom full of significantly disabled children would go on for 5 years without parents ever being notified by the school district. As a private lay advocate, I represent families in school IEP meeting and 504 meetings. I run into all kinds of cases from abuse to non-compliance on school matters, just not following accommodations, not getting services adequate for these children, and also retaliation against parents, some who are actual teachers in the school setting. We want the public to know what happens to special needs children. I began doing this even when I was a volunteer for CHAD and LDA in my early years when I first started my advocacy work. CHAD is a national organization for students and adults. It's children and adults with attention deficit disorder. LDA stands for Learning Disabilities of America.
IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. IDEA was originally enacted by Congress in 1975 to ensure that children with disabilities have the opportunity to receive a free, appropriate public education, just like other children. The law has been revised many times over the years.
Students with disabilities are protected with federal laws, IDEA and ADA law. Advocates and attorneys use these laws to protect students and develop IEPs, which are individual education plans, for students who were identified with special needs. This is a very complicated process. It's supposed to be parent-friendly, but it is not. Parents must become lawyers, advocates for their children and learn how to use these laws to get what their children need through special education or 504. Students who are covered by IDEA and 504 have many legal rights. One of the legal rights is FAPE, free and appropriate education. It is a very broad part of special education. It means, that schools should develop an appropriate education plan, and it's free to students with disabilities. As an advocate, my ultimate goal is to help parents receive FAPE and get an appropriate IEP or 504 in place for their child. We do this through requesting evaluations, through changing goals to make sure that we include everything that the student needs to get the services that he's entitled to.
We are the Hatchers. They can't talk, but we can.
For more information, log on to theycan'ttalkbutwecaninc.org. Follow us on Facebook at They Can't Talk, But We Can Inc. Also on Twitter, They Can't Talk. Let's protect the students from being abused, the teachers from being accused. They can't talk, but we can.
I'm Retha Gray from Betty White's Off Their Rockers. Aaron had muscular dystrophy and cerebral palsy. Because Aaron wasn't able to talk, he couldn't tell anyone what was really going on in school. Unfortunately, Aaron is no longer with us today. Each year, thousands of cases go unreported where children with disabilities and special needs are abused in schools. It is our mission to protect the child as well as the teachers who educate them. Please help us in our effort to stop the abuse and promote safety by donating to Aaron Hatcher's They Can't Talk, But We Can, P.O. Box 2392, Roswell, Georgia 30077, or visit our website, theycan'ttalkbutwecaninc.org.